Hi, soul friends. Thanks to you, we're building a beautiful community. We hope you find our conversations interesting and helpful. If you do, you can help us by liking the podcast, sharing it with friends, and following it for updates. Click on like, share, and follow on your podcast platform, and we will continue to meet you here in this beautiful space with our conversations and our guests. So let's get to our episode.
In this episode, we explore beautiful boredom because there are energetic costs to the return to life as we knew it before the pandemic. There are costs to doing too much beyond our ability to stay regulated. It's like writing a check that overdraws our energetic account and withdraws too many of our energetic coins, leaving us in an energy debt. Whereas beautiful boredom is a respite from all of that. It's an invitation to explore our inner world. It's our quiet moments where creativity can blossom, a chance to reconnect with our original self and dream without boundaries. So let's have a listen together, friends. Enjoy.
My friend was telling me about, I think it was a TED Talk that he listened to, and he was talking, he's extroverted, but he was talking about how extroverts, it's like a coin bank of energy. They get up in the morning and they have lots of coins and they want to give their coins to all the people. And every time they encounter a person, that person gives them one of their coins, right? It's like a coin exchange, but extroverts come filled in the morning with coins, and introverts apparently come with like 5 coins. And so they're very selective about who they give a coin to and when they give their coins out.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
I know. I just feel like, but the older I get, the less coins I have, even because I think I have a lot of coins, but I still feel like I get drained. I don't replenish, I guess, as easily.
That's so true.
I notice that just energy sensitive in general, it depends on my group. So I can go in a place, especially in my own home, where I can kind of, I can set the vibration. I feel like it's filled with kind of love, and I clean it regularly. I cleanse it, and I try and keep it an open, clean vessel, let's call it, I kind of call it. And I find that when I'm around certain friends that are of a vibration level, it's a different thing. I don't have to set the space. Like kind of like when we come together in the pod, it's like, and this is not about anyone above or below, but there are different frequency levels that people are operating at. And I remember back in the days when I was training out of a gym, but if I was the first one in the gym, which I usually was in the morning, especially when I was running some of the spaces, I could set the tone no matter who came in there. Whereas if I would start later on and someone else had been in the gym to begin, and this could be like, I trained at hotel gyms as well. So this could have been like guests, or it could have been, other trainers and their clients. But I couldn't do anything about their energy levels, or it took me a longer time to kind of get that space into that really welcoming kind of equilibrium within the physical space. And, we know this, that we, the higher we vibe within ourselves, and this is kind of part of the ascension part of the spiritual journey, is the vertical column versus the horizontal column timeline that we live in, our everyday life. This vertical column, the higher we are up that ladder, the more we can actually bring people along with us. Whereas when we're not stable or grounded within ourselves, we're more apt to get pulled down and feel ungrounded by some of those lower frequency energies.
Wow. Yeah, that is so true.
I noticed that with physical exertion in my case, renovating a home that is beyond my skill set. So it's not just physical, it's brain, learning things, like how to do things. And it's been so physically and mentally demanding that my coins, like you referred to, Megan, I love that reference, are not only withdrawn, I'm borrowing coins from anywhere I can get them. I'm being charged credit card interest.
Yes. Don't you love the idea of the cost that actually takes? The toll that it takes on your body, on your relationships,
it takes
on
the cost of my joy is actually what it does, because it's combined with the care of my mother and my work, which the nature of my work, if I don't deposit my own coins back with connection to the universe, I'm in a place of a deficit. And it's very like, and I felt that the last, since I helped move my mom into assisted living and helped her declutter her home and sell her home. And just, there was so much that I still am in a deficit, and I'm still catching up. And I think it's important to just be honest with that in midlife, that it's okay to be in a deficit, because there's so much responsibility at this stage it can be. To have a really full life means there's tons of responsibility, which means there will be phases of depletion. Is there something going on about, like, is there humping going on in the background? What's going on? I was like, there's like a,
I heard that.
And then I realized,
hey, Mookie.
Sorry, this is like the Whistler dogs and everything going on. Speaking of depletion. So anyways, dial back to depletion.
Yes. Well, I feel it's important to normalize the depletion that can happen in midlife, because we have so many responsibilities. Like, although my kids are young adults, they still need a lot of my support and energy and financial support, which requires my energy, right?
Totally.
Us in midlife, we're straddling taking care of elderly, aging parents with all their health stuff and all their financial things. Like when I moved my mom, and all the costs of selling her home, and just the cost, like health costs too. And then that has a cost on our energy and the withdrawal of our coins. I just love this theme for our podcast.
Yeah.
It goes into a deficit. I would say it's helpful to normalize the deficit, the energetic deficit that we are in. And when I normalize it, I can actually bring joy back into my life. When I do that, it allows me to have humor in my relationship again, where I can joke around with Dario, and we can joke about the sometimes shitty circumstances.
Yes.
Bring some humor into it, even joke about it with my kids, even when they're the subject of the joke.
Totally.
And it helps bring a bit of levity into this intense, deficit stage of life that it can be. Yeah.
So many people are just have a lot of things going, a lot of different, they're going in a lot of different directions. Like you guys are talking about with the sandwich generation, the kids, different ages, different stages, just what's happening in the world, fear, the news, social media. I mean, like our attention is just going in all these different directions. And then our energy goes with it.
Unless we do something to counteract.
And I do fight that. Yeah. I don't know. Like, do we just want to try to do it all? Do we want to try, we want to be helpful. We want to be contributing to our society. We want to be in service to people. We want to do all these things, but it is right now feels very draining.
Well, and I'd always wonder too on that. Like, so what's the why behind it? Like when we feel this call to do all of the things, and is it like, what's driving that? Is it that, perfectionist nature within ourselves that hasn't been looked after, that we feel like we have to have everything, all the ducks in a row? Mine are never in a fucking row. They're all scattered all over the sidewalk. They're like, one's walking here, one's walking there. Whether it's actually, we want that for ourselves, or we just want to project that out to the world, that we can do all of these things. But is it better to do that and spread ourselves really, really thin, both, mentally and physically? Or what if we just scale back? And I think what we're seeing too is, remember conversations during the pandemic where everyone was like, oh, wow, like how many parents out there were like, this is so great. This slower pace is good for my kids. It's good for me. We're not overscheduled, driving here and there all the time. Yet we've returned back to a society that is full on. And it's exhausting for everybody, especially if you're not managing your energy.
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point, Dana, because the swing of the pendulum of how we, spend our energetic coins during COVID was forced upon us to kind of regroup and come back into our immediate surroundings. And because it was forced, it wasn't personally chosen. Yeah. Many now took the swing of the pendulum to the other side to be pro-social again without their own grounding boundaries.
Yes.
because of a sense of a void from missing out from the pandemic. And so it just kind of shows that when something's not chosen, and it's forced upon you, then the lesson might be lost.
Totally.
If it's not chosen, versus there were families that and individuals that experienced a benefit, and then they kind of redesigned their lives because of the pandemic. And I'll speak to like this tendency to overbook. I know from my conditioning, being raised by a tiger mom, when my kids were little, I just unconsciously, without even realizing I was doing it, I just replicated the pattern of, essentially at its core, it's like validating worthiness through production.
Yes.
Worthiness
I think all of
through
society
production.
does, right?
Yeah. And I had it on a kind of extreme level. Fortunately, I unlearned that pattern when they were in middle school and high school, and the divorce really had me unlearn it. Like my pendulum swung to the other side, but intentionally, because I was choosing to like unlearn my programming. And that was a blessing. Like it had me have a completely new relationship with my kids. Interestingly, I can recognize my internal tendency and habit to want to go there, but it's just because conditioning, I think, stays with us for life. But when you can recognize it, you don't have to be it. When you can see it, you don't have to be it. I'm like, oh, hello, old conditioning. It's like I get these constrictions in my chest, or kind of body sensations of like, oh, I should be different than what I am. And then it's like, oh no, I don't need it. It's like you hold your breath and like, and then, oh, right, I remember, there's a release back into, just beingness again.
It's interesting because I was listening to you when you were talking about the pandemic, and I almost feel like a resistance. So when you talked about permission to be tired, this is really an exhausting time when you're juggling kids and parents and all the things. But on the flip side is like, for me, there's a bit of resistance to all that productivity. I was one of those people who really enjoyed having a smaller group, less on my schedule. And then when everything opened up again, I felt, because now I know, like, the other side of it is to feel rested, is to set boundaries, and so I feel like in this stage right now, everything kind of opened up, and it was kind of gradual, but then once everything opened up, it went like everybody went, oh, I'm traveling, I'm doing this, I'm back in here, I'm doing all the sports and all the activities and all the work, and I'm catching up. It was almost like I'm catching up for missed time. And I was like, so that even put us into a deeper sense of overwhelm. And now I think there's a lot of people who are feeling this drain.
Yes.
And so I'm responding to that kind of resistance by setting hard boundaries.
Atta girl.
Yeah. And so I've been doing that probably the last 6 months. And that in and of itself is draining.
Well, you get pushback,
a lot
right?
of energy. Yeah. So I've realized that boundaries are really, really important to me.
Yeah.
And important for my conservation of my energy, to honor myself and the inner peace that I so desire. And I have to, because we are just in too much, like this level of performance and productivity.
And overstimulation.
Yeah.
Big time overstimulation. Yeah.
Overstimulation. I mean, like my kids, with online, and I'm watching the kids just talk about having no boundaries. These kids have no boundaries.
Yeah.
Like online, we've talked about that before. And the only place our youth are going to learn how to set boundaries is by their parents.
Yes.
By their parents showing them what it looks like. It is hard, but it is like a survival skill.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Setting boundaries.
You're so bang on with the age that your kids are, Megan, and younger. In my coaching profession, we're anticipating, we already see it, but like an extreme rise in anxiety in the next 2 decades, when this generation grows up and becomes adults and tries to adult in the real world, with the conditioning that they will have experienced with an online world that has no boundaries and is overstimulating constantly. And the online world is designed to engage them as economic contributors. So it's everything's like really
it's curated by the
curated,
and not in a healthy way. And I love this is again one of the many things I love about Ayurveda too, is that we look at all of these things that we take in as part of the digestive process. You know, in our Western world, we think about digestion as part of like the food and the nutrients that we're taking in. But the reality is we have receptors of things that we're taking into our either consciously or subconsciously that have to get processed. And so interestingly, fun fact, this stuff actually gets processed at night. And this is the importance of actual sleep and circadian rhythm, because this process happens between about 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. It's called our Pitta time, where Pitta rules Agni, which is kind of what we call digestive fire. And so that's our traditional digestion. There's also 7 other Agnis that are within the physical body, according to Ayurveda. And these experiences, anything that we kind of go about our day in the mental world, has to get processed in these evenings hours. And so if we chinks on our sleep a little bit, we often don't get the opportunity to process this while we're sleeping. You of course can process stuff in real time too, through some of the other tools we use. But I feel like this is what gets so lost right now in this bombardment from media, is that everything, every movie, every trailer, every, game, it's all coming in, and if it's not getting looked at, these accumulate as what we call ama, which is toxins in the body.
Sludge.
And I think, exactly. And that's literally what it is. And that's why often it affects our entire bodies and minds. And I think what scares me a lot with some of these trends in not only the technology and the speed that it's getting processed within, us and the world around us, there's fascinations with these games that have violence. And at young ages, can you differentiate between what's real and what's not? We've got, kids that are in this trend of horror movies apparently are trending huge for young people. And, what is this? What is this like? What are they processing as a young age? I remember being 14 years old, and they might have been even 13 actually. And my sister, we'd watch, this is back in like the beta days and VHS days, and we'd rented a beta machine from the local video store.
I remember.
Blockbuster. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't even think it was that at the time. It was the little one in West Van.
Yeah,
that
it was before.
Yeah, totally. The chains.
Oh my gosh.
And we rented one because my parents didn't have the money to buy one. So we would rent one once in a while for, a couple nights. And my sister was a couple of years older, and she was into the horror movies. And so we ended up watching, not Freddy Krueger, not Krueger. No, what's Jason, the hockey, Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th.
Okay.
So that was the first time I'd watched that. I was always really sensitive to like violence and stuff like that too. So I have not done well with that.
God.
Well, like that just scared the shit out of me forever. And I've like sworn off horror movies. I really don't watch news media unless I have to, because I find I have a heart. I learned a long time ago that stuff really is really hard for me to process. And of course, Ayurveda actually helped me understand why it was so hard.
Why?
Anyhow, that was a long way of saying I'm really concerned about what kind of content our young people are being exposed to too.
Yeah, like subconsciously they've taken it in, but what are they actually doing with that information? And what on the flip side, like we all know now that we have to balance, like counterbalance what we receive, right, from the world. And then we go into our healing practices and we learn how to rest and digest and to recover. But are the youth doing that?
What I've observed is that the horror movie example is a great example, because when their nervous systems are already saturated with a lot of stimulation, it takes more stimulation to get a response and to feel something.
It's kind of like drugs and alcohol, right?
Yeah,
I want more. I want more.
Their baseline. Well, it's actually not even wanting more. It's just the baseline to feel, because their nervous systems are so stimulated already with technology that there's a consistent background activation going on that it takes more to feel something. So we're kind of living in this, especially for our kids, they're living in this consistently activated nervous system state that is seeking feeling,
Wow.
but it takes a lot more because of the exposure, that's already inherent in their lives because our kids live overstimulated lives.
Some of the things I notice in when I'm working with clients too is encourage, especially the ones that have got, kids in all of the things. And not only are the parents like running on empty because they're going between this and that, but the kids are running on empty, and remembering that like we're the parent for a reason. And just because your kid wants to do all of the activities doesn't mean that's healthy for them. Giving downtime, time to be bored, cutting something out of the schedule, or just say, even taking a day and saying, you know what, all activities canceled, we're going to hit the park, or we're just going to have a home day, or like whatever that is. And I think that's something that like this overachieving, overdoing kind of society needs too, is like, as parents, no, you don't get to go today.
Yeah.
And
Right,
sitting
exactly.
with that, right? Because our kids, we often, we often cave in for multiple reasons, but really being firm in those boundaries.
Yeah, exactly.
Parenting is exhausting. So like in our generation, in our generation, TV could be the babysitter, whereas for our kids' generation, internet and games is the babysitter.
What happened to getting kids outside exploring the real world? The real world, because when they're not exploring the real world, they're exploring an online world that has as much danger, if not more. Somehow we seem to think that the online world isn't as dangerous as the real world. I'm like, it is more so dangerous. I love that point of being bored. I actually just had this conversation with my husband because my son is an athlete and plays hockey and does all the things. And when we're away, it's summer right now, and we're at the lake right now. That's where I'm calling in from. And I said to my husband, the greatest joy that I feel when I'm here is watching my kids sit at the lake and catch minnows with their hands. They're catching them with their hands because their hands are big enough now, right? They don't need the net. But they're literally just looking at the shoreline, looking for little minnows for hours.
So beautiful.
That focus, that presence is what we as adults, what we try to find in meditation, what we try to find when we go on our forest walks, that's what forest therapy is like literally bringing people into a very present, embodied moment with nature. To your point about this is what boredom looks like.
The wonderment of a child.
To your point, Megan, I noticed that with my kids that my eldest is an extreme athlete with surfing, and the way his nervous system regulates is he'll go hard because his sport is really or energetically exhausting and challenging. And there's lots of life threats within that you have to be aware for safety.
Yeah, he can't not be present in his role. That's where actually I think a lot of sports can be really great for that, because they do take people so into the moment, right?
Yeah,
that's
intense focus. But then in order to recuperate from that, his downtime is extreme, like boredom, in the sense of like nothingness, no stimulation. And that's healthy for him. And when he's in town with us, he'll like do a backyard bonfire and then just like chill and relax and have these periods of nothingness. And so that's a healthy balance for that kind of way of living in the world.
Yes, absolutely.
And mine is more like work orientated, intense focus for work. And then the family time is that just kind of like preparing meals, shooting the shit, talking about nothing, sitting in the backyard under the trees, going, cold dipping in the ocean, giggling, laughing about just nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful boredom. Oh, beautiful boredom.
Totally.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Beautiful boredom. Yeah. Oh my God, that's your book. I feel like you have to write that book. Oh my gosh. Come on. Would you not buy that book right now?
Hell yeah.
Beautiful
Yeah, totally.
boredom. That's my favorite term. I think that's going to be my favorite term
I love it.
for the rest of my life. Beautiful boredom. That's what the world is missing.
It's missing. It's so true.
Beautiful boredom.
And being okay with that, right?
Yes. Being okay with it. Exactly. In beautiful boredom, something can be created out of a void. Life's treasures don't lie in being constantly busy, but in the joy of being present, aware, and feeling alive. This kind of reflective space can help us feel peace in the chaos of our otherwise fast-paced world, because it's in these moments that our minds and hearts can find their most profound insights. Thank you to you, dear listeners, for listening into SoulNet. You can find us on Instagram at SoulNet Podcast.